Do artists really have to starve to be true to their craft? Must the business side of creativity drain all inspiration? No, it does not. 5 minutes on creative entrepreneurship can help you master the business side of creativity, reap greater rewards from your talent, and enjoy your work to the fullest.
I'm so glad trouble don't last always.
Last week, I discussed the key decision about hiring your first overhead role and whether that should be a client-facing account manager or a market-facing account maker. While you might want to find one person for both roles, that never works out. If you try to economize that way, you may end up permanently stuck in the growth gap. But that's not the only gap you'll face in growing your creative business. There are other points along the path that have similarly difficult obstacles, which, if you aren't prepared to maneuver, can likewise get you stuck. I'm Eric Holter, and I've been a serial creative entrepreneur for over 3 decades. After graduating from Rhode Island School of Design in 1991, I could cut and print beautiful wood engravings. But I had no idea how to run a business. They just don't teach enough about business in art school. When a creative advances their freelance practice into a growing firm, they end up getting surprised by one business reality after another. The process of growing a business inevitably requires facing curveballs and sideswipes. Many are unpredictable, and you just have to be nimble and resourceful as an entrepreneur. But not all challenges should be surprises. But when we lack business experience, we get tossed around by waves we really ought to have seen coming. One of these predictable challenges is connected to growth stages. You see, businesses don't typically scale incrementally. You're not likely to hire one new person each year on your way to growth. Rather, you advance from one size tier to another tier rapidly. And as you're in those transitional phases from one tier to another, there's plenty of room for failure. The first stage is simply going from a freelance practice into a small team. But that team is not likely to be just 1 or 2. More often than not, you'll go from being a solopreneur to having a team of around 4 to 6. This has to do with some simple resourcing math. You see, there's an economic sweet spot for any service-based professional practice. A creative practice should always strive for an average utilization of 60% of all of your available work averaged across all team members. It's very hard to achieve anything higher than 60% due to the necessary overhead of running a company. And if you fail to stay close to that percentage, you won't have enough profit to sustain your growth. And so as your company grows, you'll end up needing to add roles, such as new business development, that will carry a very low billable utilization percentage. As soon as you add that role, your overall company-wide utilization will drop significantly. And if they're successful at bringing in lots of new clients, you'll have even more work to do, requiring more production staff. And so you'll end up with something like 3 production roles for each overhead role. Then, as even more work flows in, you'll soon need another overhead role, such as a project or account manager. While this role is not entirely overhead, they do tend to have lower overall utilization than your primary creative staff. And so your team needs to scale upward in order to keep overall utilization as close to that 60% target as possible. And therefore, as a 4 to 6 person team moves forward, it soon becomes a group of 10 to 12. A firm can stop growing at any of these levels and remain a balanced and sustainable business, but it's very hard to start moving up toward the next level in increments. If your staffing and roles end up out of balance in terms of the ratio of overhead roles to production roles, you'll have persistent problems with profitability or with maintaining balanced workloads. You can't remain in such an imbalanced state for very long. You'll either be forced back down to the previous stage or you'll have to climb up to the next. The next stage, from 10 to 12, moves up to 18 to 24. And this jump involves some changes to basic overhead and production ratios. That's because at this size, there will be significant adjustments to how your team functions. Larger firms require tiered management, tighter policies and procedures, and more reliance on systems. So new tasks and new roles associated with these changes will have to be factored into your utilization math. When you get on the growth path, keep these tiers and targets in mind. And as you move from one tier to the next, be ready for a strenuous climb. You're going to need resilience, endurance, and focus until you reach that next plateau. Until next week, don't let the business of creativity overwhelm your creative business.
5 Minutes on Creative Entrepreneurship is a podcast by Eric Holter, mentor to creative entrepreneurs. You can find more content and resources at erichholter.com. His book, Blazing the Freelance Trail, is available on Amazon in print, Kindle, and audio. If this podcast is helpful to you, be sure to share it with your colleagues, and ratings and reviews are always appreciated.
I'm so glad trouble don't last